Rituals. Rituals of promise is our sub-theme today. We all have them. We have little ones and we have big ones. Rituals that inform and provide us a sense of identity in many respects. The last 2 years, most of our rituals have been disrupted in a variety of ways, obviously. And our rituals basically start from the moment you wake up in the morning. I would bet that if I were to ask each of you that you pretty much do the exact same thing every morning. You get up, in my case, I go downstairs, put on a pot of coffee. Go back upstairs, brush my teeth, and so on. If things get in the way of the ritual, if I'm out of coffee, or if I am somehow disrupted, it irks me. Because I are creatures of habit. And it's not just because we like habit, it is because it is, as I said, names us and it identifies us for who we are. So we have very small rituals and we have very large rituals. Anybody in the room want to share a ritual you have? Anybody? Anything interesting? Leslie? You cuddle with your dog on the bed. Before you get up. So that's an important ritual for you. And if it doesn't happen, you're just not the same, I bet, right? So we have these kinds of things. As a culture, as our variety of cultures have different rituals as well. I was in high school, I was in a cadet corps. And in the cadet corps, we had very, very specific and regimented rituals that were meant for a particular purpose. The rituals that I experienced in that cadet corps were part of who we were, and they were instilled upon us to create a particular kind of feeling. Rituals, what rituals do for us is they give you a sense of identity. They provide you a sense of groundedness. They allow you to feel confident. They provoke in us, can provoke in us a sense of pride and worthiness. And the bigger the ritual, the more profoundly important and more power they have upon us. Rituals, when we engage in them, are dealing with that side of ourselves that is the most vulnerable. Rituals provoke a sense of confidence and counteract often those feelings of inadequacy or a sense of not feeling particularly grounded or feeling like a flag blowing in the wind. What a ritual can do for us is embrace the vulnerabilities that reside within us and give us a purpose, a strength, and can elicit a sense of courage. Rituals do for us what we cannot often do for ourselves, to give us strength and courage. I often thought there are two kinds of courage in the world. Courageous people. The one is the immediate and the situational courage where there is something has happened or a moment of extreme need where courage is summoned and we rush in to assist those who are in need of whatever it is is happening to them. You know the kind of courage when you read about or see on YouTube when somebody has run into the traffic to grab a person who was about to be struck by a barreling car coming down the road out of control. Or someone jumping into a raging river to pull a poor dog or cat that's seemingly drowning out of the water and saves his life. This is the kind of courage that is spontaneous and immediate. And often you hear people when they're interviewed say, "I didn't think twice about it, that's just what you do." You just You just respond. You just do it. But there's a second kind of courage as well. And this one is displayed not simply a single moment or act, but it is anticipating a significant or daunting event or situation that may even be frightening, challenging. And when confronted by this challenge, we do not turn away, but rather we meet it head on. This is also a matter of character. Kind of courage where you put your own needs behind everything else. And it is particularly this second kind of courage that I think Jesus, in our gospel reading this morning, displays in this passage before us. Some Pharisees, we don't know who they are, they come and they warn Jesus to go on the lam because Herod is out to get him. He's out for his blood. And we know that they tell Jesus to run and to save his own life, and yet Jesus refuses. Instead, he will keep to the road appointed, traveling the arduous path that he has set before him on the way to Jerusalem. He knows what is in store for him. Over the course of history, there have been many people, I think, that we have seen and experienced that have exhibited that kind of courage, that in the face of challenge, even to their own, perhaps, demise and death, they continue on the path of righteousness and justice. I can't help these days thinking of President Zelensky. This week, I've watched more videos of him standing vulnerable, with his vulnerability completely exposed, but there courageously speaking on behalf of his people, asking the world to pay attention, asking the world to come to their aid, putting his own life at risk, even in spite of the fact that he has 2 small children and a wife. And he knows what the implications of doing what he's doing. He is standing for what he believes in, that he is called to be a leader, courageously, without thought for his own well-being. There is a meme going around of a picture of him dressed like Captain America. Has anybody seen that? That is courage that I really don't understand. But it is the kind of courage that we see Jesus exhibiting as well. And what struck me, as I say, about this experience of Jesus heading towards Jerusalem in spite of what may happen was the vulnerability that he expresses when he laments for the city of Jerusalem. "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, why have you let me down?" And yet, I think Jesus demonstrates that vulnerability is essential to courage. It stands at the core of the Christian life and invites us to discover the peculiar strength of being open to the needs of those around us, putting the needs of others before our own needs. This passage, Jesus chooses an image of a hen gathering her brood of chicks to her for protection and safety, to illustrate his love and his concern for God's people. It's a provocative feminine image that has stimulated much discussion over the centuries, that invites a reimagining for some of us of the view of God as the feminine. It is also an image of unparalleled vulnerability. Jesus' choice of this image has helped me realize that it is our own vulnerability that spurs our courage and nourishes our strength, simply because we can and will do things for those we love more so than we would do things for ourselves. Someone once asked me, "How much do you love your children?" This is when my first son was born, your child. And all I could say was, I love him enough to take a bullet for him. It doesn't even begin to express how the love of another can overwhelm and override the concerns we have for oneself. Brené Brown, many of you may know her. She's a kind of a storyteller, a researcher. She invites us to recognize that while vulnerability inevitably opens us up to feeling things we might want to avoid, it also spurs us to be more authentically human and more caring and more compassionate and more courageous than we could otherwise be. Brené Brown reminds us that the word courage comes from the Latin word cor, C-O-R, which means heart, and defines courage as from the heart, the willingness to embrace our vulnerability in order to be authentic selves. Christian courage, then, might be the kind of wholehearted living that comes from believing that as God's children, we are enough, and that those around us are also God's beloved children, and therefore deserve our love, empathy, and respect. To embrace our own vulnerability, to be courageous, to live out the life of Christ as we can as Christians in this world, so that justice, love, and compassion may surround us, and that we each may embrace those who need the embracing as the hen does and gathers the chicks in her breast. Thanks be to God. Amen.